Here we go. Recording in three, two, and one.
I am a passenger, and I ride and I ride. I ride through the city's backsides. I see the stars come out of the sky. Yeah, they're bright in a hollow sky. You know, it looks so good tonight.
Yeah, I have something for that one too. Welcome to episode 196 of
Six.
Nerdery Murdery.
Big 196. I'm Zig with your nerdery.
And I'm Jeffrey with the Murdery. Welcome to another week of the highs and lows, the up and down, the good and the bad, the nerd, the murd. You want to know a show that I never watched that I started watching? Never watched Supergirl.
Supergirl was great.
It's it's campy.
Hmm.
I don't know that I would say great, but it's been fun. It's one of those shows that I watch at lunch just I need something fun, not too serious, not too involved, and you can stay with that one pretty well. But it's been pretty decent. Just finished season one. I'm in season two now. I think there's like 8 seasons of that or something like that, or six or
I
something. I
was
don't
keeping up
remember.
with all of the Arrowverse stuff for a long time. I think I finally quit when they ended uh
Legends of Tomorrow.
yeah. But basically, when Legends of Tomorrow was over, I kind of quit. And I think I went back and watched some of the rest of the Flash.
Hmm. Chelsea always liked him. I wasn't watching those with her, so it's been fun watching. Like I said, it's kind of campy at
Hmm.
times. I thought it was hysterical in one episode where Callista Flockhart, who's Cat Grant, is walking through the office on the phone, and she's telling the person on the phone, "No, and tell Harrison Ford, not only am I not interested, but I'm not interested in married men." Which she's married to Harrison
Yeah,
Ford in
she's
real
married to
life.
Harrison Ford.
So I thought that was
They've been
just
together like 20
hysterical.
years now, too.
Yeah, yeah, they've been getting a long, long time. So that I thought was hysterical. Her character is funny in that. I really enjoy it. It's a good one. It's a good one. All right, so you ready to pick it back up?
I am.
All right, take it away.
Okay, so in the last episode, we talked about Punkabilly and Cowpunk. There were too many songs for one episode. There's still like probably 20 or 30 songs I can also do, but these are the ones that were important to me. And you will ask now, why did you put Iggy Pop in twice? There's method to my madness. So he's important to this story. So basically, cowpunk is a derivative mixture of punk rock attitude and old roots rock and Jimmy Rogers, basically. Rock and roll and country and western and hillbilly music all came from the same place, right? Um, and it was personified by Jimmy Rogers. Well, it was personified by some other but, artists as well, but the ones that played on everybody's radio was Jimmy Rogers. So um, they kind of distilled this idea of hard, fast rock and roll, um, easy chord progressions, um, but also country western ideas. So that's what we're going to talk about. And
Okay.
the first song, you guys should stop and listen to the list for episode 197. We'll give them a second to do that. Okay, they're back. The first song in this list is a Goo Goo Muck by the Cramps. The Cramps were an American rock band formed in 1976 and active until 2009. Their lineup rotated frequently during their existence with a husband and wife duo of singer Lux Interior and guitarist Poison Ivy, the only ever present members. The bands are credited as progenitors of the psychobilly subgenre, fusing elements of punk rock with rockabilly. The addition of guitarist Brian Gregory and drummer Pam Billam resulted in the first complete lineup in April of 1976. They released their debut album, Songs the Lord Taught Us, in 1980. The band split after the death of lead singer Lux Interior in 2009. Lux Interior was born Eric Lee Perkaiser, and Poison Ivy was born Christy Marlena Wallace, and they met in Sacramento, California in 1972. The album Bad Music for Bad People is the second compilation album of previously released material by the American rock band The Cramps. It was released in 1984 on IRS Records and was seen by many fans as a cynical cash in by the record label following the departure of the band. Sounds, the now defunct UK music paper gave the album a 5-star review, but said Miles Copeland's IRS label picked the carrion of the former label mates even cleaner by releasing a watered down version of the Off the Bone singles collection that was released in the UK. The music's still great, even if the scheming behind bad music for bad people stinks of decay and corruption. I will say this, there was a lot of Cramp stuff that was hard to come by, even though they were on IRS and Alternative Tentacles and stuff like that. Um, this was the first way a lot of people were able to actually hear this stuff. So I kind of like bad music for bad people. I think it's great. I love the album art where it's this weird, um, almost zombie looking guy with crazy hair. That's the cover album or the cover of the album Bad Music for Bad People. It is also the cover for the video that we played in our YouTube playlist. What did you think about Goo Goo Muck by the
This
Cramps?
this one had a very 50s vibe. Made
Yes.
kind of made me think a little bit similar to Dark Knight from last week for some reason. Not a bad song.
Hmm.
I think this one could have also been a Tarantino movie song.
Yes. This actually they used it for the Wednesday series on Netflix.
Hmm,
It was one of the songs she danced to.
gotcha.
I was like, oh, that makes sense. Yeah, that's Cramps. Yeah, they've got some really wild, crazy stuff, but Goo Goo Muck is kind of more in the vein of this music because they kind of
Hmm.
went all over the place. It's like the Misfits. It's like a lot of people, a lot of heavy metal guys were into the Misfits, and a lot of punk guys were also into the Misfits. They kind of cross genres. The Cramps are the same way. Um, so yeah, I really dig this one. I like the sound of it. I like the 1950s, early 1960s kind of tune it produces. The next one is Candy. It is a song from Iggy Pop's ninth solo album, Brick by Brick. It is a duet with Kate Pearson of the B-52s, and it was the album's second single. In September of 1990, it became the biggest mainstream hit of Iggy Pop's career and reached the top 40 of the United States for the first and only time. The song additionally peaked with top 10 in Australia, Belgium, and the Netherlands. Iggy Pop always says he wrote one good pop song. Candy, he noted, it's a very decent, proper pop song, and that's as far as it went. Um, it was on his album Brick by Brick, the cover, which was drawn by American cartoonist Charles Burns. Candy reappears on the 1996 compilation Nude and Rude, the best of Iggy Pop, and a 2005 two disc compilation, A Million in Prizes, the anthology. What did you think about Candy, Candy, Candy?
This was a weird one. The song really kind of started off boring and then it kind of picked up.
Hmm.
I thought I was going to like this song, but the song really kind of stayed very boring and nothing I can really put my finger on. I preferred the female singer in this one. I liked her
Kate
part the
Pearson
best.
from the B-52s.
Okay, I thought I recognized her. I liked her part the best.
Yeah. I'm glad
I
you got
could,
out, but hell, I miss you. It's like,
yeah,
oh yeah.
yeah. I mean, this one was okay. It wasn't great. It was okay. It was okay.
Just okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
I kind of like this one. This one's been around a long time. It's that again, that sound that it's kind of hard to put your finger on that cowpunk punkabilly sound, for lack of a better term. Um, it's one of the ones that's been in my rotation for a long time. The next song is "Burning House of Love" by X. X is an American punk rock band from Los Angeles. The original members are vocalist Exene Cervenka, vocalist bassist John Doe, guitarist Billy Zoom, and drummer DJ Bonebreak. The band released 7 studio albums from 1980 to 1993. After a period of inactivity during the mid to late 1990s, X reunited in the early 2000s and continues to tour. In June 2024, X announced a final album and farewell tour. X achieved limited mainstream success, but influenced various genres of music, including punk rock, Americana, and folk rock. And in 1991, music critic Robert Hyburn identified them as one of the most influential bands of the era. Um, Ain't Love Grand is their 5th studio album. It was released in July of 1985 by Elektra Records. The album was first not produced by Ray Manzarek. Ray Manzarek produced all of their albums up until this point. It was reissued with 4 bonus tracks by Rhino Records in 2002. The album included the minor radio hit Burning House of Love, which the band performed on American Bandstand in September of '85. Their largest television exposure to date. The album also included a cover of the Small Faces song All or Nothing. Lead guitarist Billy Zoom left the band after this album, but he later returned to the group in 1998. Um, Again, they started out as kind of a hardcore punk band. Like you get songs like Los Angeles and stuff like that. But before this, they did an album called Under the Dark Sun where they covered the song Breathless. You leave me breathless. It was just an old 50s Americana song. And they kind of got into doing this kind of music after that. Again, they were in and around the same scene as Social Distortion and Concrete Blonde. So all of these people were, and they were influenced by Jason and the Scorchers, which we talked about earlier in the last episode, and the Beat Farmers, stuff like that. It starts to make a scene there where, as I said before, hardcore punk all sounds the same. Doesn't matter where you come from. If you're in Huntington Beach, California, or Washington, D.C., it all sounded the same. It was hard. It was fast. It was good to go. As that faded, these small scenes started to differentiate. So LA doesn't sound anything like Minneapolis. It might sound like Athens, Georgia, which got a more 1960s pop influence to it, or Chicago, which got a power pop sound to it, which is how we end up getting um, that big power pop resurgence by Material Issue, which was one of their biggest indie bands from that region. But in LA's case, for some reason, they took the punkabilly route, the cowpunk route, and it kind of took off, and they were kind of in that thing, in that vein. So, what did you think about Burning House of Love?
I loved every single thing about this song. I relate this to how I was when I first heard The Trip from Steel Corners.
Uh-huh.
Um,
I'm
if this
surprised you haven't heard this because I've been playing X for a long time.
No, if this is indicative of this group's music, I want more. This is a groovy song that I had to listen to multiple times. I like
Oh,
this one a lot.
oh, one of my favorite love songs is by them. It's called Fourth of July.
Hmm.
You check that one out.
Okay.
It is very indicative of that sound. Um, but yeah, X is one of those bands, and it's weird because you hear their first album, it sounds nothing like this. But I still like it. It's the two of them singing together, and what's weird is they were a couple for a long time. They even got married. About the time that this album was released, they got divorced and split up. Still friends. She ends up marrying Viggo Mortensen and has kids with him, and he ends up marrying this other lady and having kids with them. They have since left those spouses and they're now, I don't want to say they're in a relationship, but they're very tight now because they were together like 15 years, um, Exene and John Doe. But yeah, I love all the stuff that they did, and especially this Americana stuff. It just blows me away. The next song is Finders Keepers by the Tom Story Trio featuring Rhythm Sophie. Tom Story, after 10 years playing with Mystery Gang, came forth with a brand new rockabilly act named the Tom Story Trio. The band had already finished recording their first album, Respect for the 50s, as well as filming a very cool video to go along with it. Tom is one of the leading bad boys of the Hungarian rockabilly scene. So apparently, this is also big in Hungary as well as Zurich. Um, with 10 years of playing drums in Mystery Gang and more than 1,500 gigs, a number of albums published by Japanese, British, American, and German labels, the organizers of 3 international festivals in Budapest, self-made radio programs, movie scores, cooperating on compilation albums, publishers all around the world are behind him. You could say he's a busy guy. Tom's career arrived to yet another milestone. Tom invited Buddy Binkley on double bass and the 10,000-volt singer guitarist Long Tall Sonny to be in his trio. They also asked Rhythm Sophie, who is basically a YouTube sensation, to sing on this as well. It was released in 2010. What did you think about Finders Keepers by the Tom Story Trio featuring Rhythm Sophie?
I wasn't a fan of this one. I mean, there was really nothing wrong with the singer or anything, but this was a little too punk for me.
Oh
Just a
yeah,
little too much.
a
Yeah.
little too much,
Yeah.
a little too. But you did detect a lot of the 50s in there, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's all over that. The next one is Born with a Tail by the Super Suckers. The Super Suckers are an American rock band formed in '88, whose music ranges from alternative rock to country rock to cowpunk. All music described the band as that bastard sons of Foghat, AC/DC, and ZZ Top after being weaned on punk rock and but unafraid of massive guitar riffs, outsized personalities, or pledging allegiance to sex, weed, and Satan with a wink and a nudge. Um, Bassist singer Eddie Spaghetti, his real name is Edward Daly, leads the band and its only constant member. The current lineup also consists of guitarist Marty Chandler, drummer Christopher Von Strecker. Their most recent album, Play That Rock and Roll, was released in February of 2020. This, however, is off of the Sacrilegious Sounds of the Super Suckers, which is their third studio album. It was released on August 8th of 1995 on Sub Pop, the same label as Nirvana. The word sacrilegious is a sacrilegious is a portmanteau of sacrilegious and delicious. It was popularized in Homer Loves Flanders, a 1994 episode of the television series The Simpsons. Um, the Super Suckers are not a serious band. They have never been a serious band. It's the guy's name is Eddie Spaghetti, you know. Um, but Born with a Tail is one of those tunes that I've been listening to for a long time that was indie, and I can never understand why more people didn't listen to it. The Super Suckers are great, and they're touring right now. What did you think with Born with a Tail by the Super Suckers?
I thought it sounded honestly to me like they were trying to be the Dead Milkmen or something like that. I didn't like it. It
Oh yeah, little
no.
too much humor.
Yeah.
They are humorous. That's one of the. I mean, they call themselves the Super Suckers. They're all about having a good time. Um, Party band. But I love that cowpunk sound. And on that album, they really kind of delved into it. Um, the next one is Don't Tear It Down by V Spy V Spy. Um, they're actually
Thought that
known
name was interesting.
they're actually known as Spy versus Spy.
I was
They
wondering.
got sued
Right.
and they didn't make a whole lot of money, so they couldn't fight it. Um, it's from AO Mod TV VRs. It's a second studio album by the Australian rock band. I'm gonna say Spy versus Spy. It was produced by Leszek Karski of The Boys Next Door, Midnight Oil, and The Knots, and released through WEA in December of 1986. The title is an abbreviation of Adults Only Modified Television Version, which used to appear at the bottom of late night movies in Australia at the time. The album peaked at number 12 on the Kent Music Report and went gold. For this album, Spy vs. Spy recorded as V Spy V Spy, and the lineup was originally trio Craig Bloxham on bass, guitarist lead vocals, Cliff Grant on drums, and percussion. Oh, I'm sorry. Cliff Grant was guitarist and lead vocals, and Mike Wiley was on lead guitars as well as drums. The album provided three singles: "Don't Tear It Down," inspired by the Department of Main Road seeking to demolish the band's Darling Street squat. So they're singing about the squat that they lived in that was about to be torn down, and they weren't going to have any place to live. Luckily, this song was kind of a hit, so they actually made some money. Spy versus Spy had a hard time making it, even though they were contemporaries of Midnight Oil and the Church and In Excess and stuff. They never really played as big here, and so they were kind of destitute for most of their period. But this particular song made it, and it played real big on the indie radio for years over here. Um, but it has that deep heart, and they weren't even trying to do a rockabilly thing, but it kind of hit there anyway. What did you think about V Spy V Spy or Spy versus Spy? Don't tear it down.
Wasn't a bad song. It wasn't great. It was just okay. I didn't hate it for sure, but it was just it was okay. Yeah.
His eye. Yeah.
Yeah. I didn't hate your life for having me listen to that song.
That wasn't one. The next one is Mother Earth by the Gun Club. The Gun Club were an American post-punk band from Los Angeles that existed from 1979 to 1996. Created and led by singer-songwriter and guitarist Jeffrey Lee Pierce, they were notable on one of the first bands in the punk rock subculture to incorporate influences from blues, rockabilly, and country music. The Gun Club has been called a tribal psychobilly blues band, as well as initiators of the punk blues sound, cowpunk. Pierce took Robert Johnson and pre-war acoustic blues and punkified it. Up until the band were drawn on Iggy and the Stooges and the New York Dolls, but he took it back so much further for inspiration. Miami is the second studio album by the Gun Club. It was released in 1982. It was released on Animal Records, founded by guitarist Chris Stein of Blondie, who also produced the album. Deborah Harry, also of Blondie, appears as a backing singer on various tracks on the album under the pseudonym D.H. Lawrence Jr. The album's front cover photograph does not include the bassist Rob Ritter, who had already left the band before leaving. Ritter first taught all the bass lines to Patricia Morrison, his replacement in the Gun Club and former bandmate of the Bags. Patricia Morrison then went on to join Sisters of Mercy, and we will talk about her a lot more in a couple of goth episodes that are coming up. Because once I did this, I realized I had to do some goth too, because there's a lot of crossover. Um, and then she ended up joining the Damned, and then after the Damned, she and Dave Vanian got married and had kids, and now they're English aristocracy, which is weird. But yeah, the Gun Club, Mother of Earth. What did you think about that song?
I really love the opening of this song, and as the song went on, I still liked it. I was shocked it didn't take a turn. I couldn't expect that with the punk that I might start off liking it and then it goes way south.
Goes way south on you.
This was a good song. This
Yeah,
was a good choice.
yeah. The Gun Club is a great band. They're a lot of fun. Apparently that Pierce guy's hard to work with, so nobody really stays in that band too long, or didn't. But the stuff he puts together, because he'll throw out a Robert Johnson song on one of these albums, and it'd be like, what? You know? And that kind of weirded people out, which is weird because Eric Clapton did it like 10 years later and everybody loved him for it. Um, the next one is by James Newell Osterberg Jr., also known as Iggy Pop. He is known professionally as Iggy Pop. He's an American singer, musician, songwriter, actor, and radio broadcaster. He was a vocalist and lyricist of the proto-punk band The Stooges, who formed in 1967 and have disbanded and reunited many times since. Often called the godfather of punk, he has been rated as one of the 50 great voices by NPR. He was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. He does have a very raw, primitive style of rock and roll. He did do a lot of stuff with David Bowie and Lou Reed. He worked on the albums The Idiot and Lust for Life. Passenger is actually off of one of those albums. He and Ricky Gardner recorded and released the single Lust for Life in 1977, or The Passenger in 1977 on the album Lust for Life, which Bowie and Lou Reed had helped them work with. It was also released as the B-side of the album's first single, Success. It was released as a single in its own right in March of 1998 in England and got up to number 22 on their charts. Again, this was kind of underground, but it was one of those songs that was indie kids all knew. And then it started playing in movies and stuff. What did you think about The Passenger by Iggy Pop?
I don't know who was first, if I missed it, if you said it, but I like Susie and the Banshees version much better.
You
Much
like
better.
yeah, it was actually his first. He released it in
Okay.
77.
Because
But Susie,
I have Susie and the Banshees in my playlist already.
yeah.
The pasture. I love that song. I
I
wasn't maybe I'm just not a fan of Iggy Pop. I don't know.
Yeah, it could be it. I want to say that the Susie's Passenger version was when Robert Smith was still with him playing guitar,
Hmm.
when he was doing double duty on The Cure, and that's why that one's so good. I know
Me
he was on
personally,
the
if
Dear
you're
Prudist one.
Me personally, if you're going to listen to The Passenger, listen to Susie and the Banshees.
Susie the Banshees.
Yeah.
All right, that's fair. That's fair. Um, I also wanted to point out in this list that this cowpunk punkabilly sound is still ongoing. People are still doing it. And it's not just like they're playing the old greatest hits. They're still producing this sound. As a matter of fact, there is a countrified folk band out of Oregon, and that's the next song. It is Down by the Water by the Decemberists. They were an indie rock band from Portland, and they formed in 2000. The band consists of Colin Melanie, Chris Funk, Johnny Conley, Nate Query, and John Mione. The band has released 9 studio albums with their lyrics often focusing on historical incidents and folklore, which plays real big into that kind of country sound. In 2011, they released Down by the Water from the album The King is Dead, and it was nominated for the Best Rock Song in the 54th Grammy Awards. Down by the Water is a song uh, includes Peter Buck and singer-songwriter Jillian Welch, who contribute 12-string guitars and vocal harmonies, respectively. So Peter Buck from REM plays on this tune. It also features accordion riffs and heavy harmonica reminiscent of Neil Young, particularly the song Heart of Gold. Down by the Water has been compared to the music of Bruce Springsteen. It was featured on free downloads on November 2nd, 2010 on their official website. This was like their biggest hit. Um, Malloy himself has said the song started out as more of an ode to REM than I think any of us really wanted it to be, but it still kind of has a "We love you REM" kind of sound to it. Peter Buck's playing on it, so. But yeah, this leans a little more into the cow more than the punk, but it still has that root to it. What did you think about Down by the Water?
This was another one that was okay, not great. I wouldn't add it to my playlist, but I didn't hate it. So
Hmm.
I didn't hate it. It was okay.
You all right?
Yep. Go ahead.
Okay. Okay. The next one is Horror Pops by Mistake. Or Mistake by Horror Pops.
There you
Sorry.
go.
They were a Danish punk band that formed in 1996. The band sound is rooted in psychobilly, rockabilly, and punk rock. Um, Band founders Patricia Day and Kim Neckerman first met on Day's now defunct band, the punk rock group Peanut Pump Gun, opened for Neckerman's psychobilly band Necromantics on the Popcom Festival in Cologne, Germany in 1996. Despite both belonging to the subcultural scene of Copenhagen, Denmark, the two had never met before, and they became friends over their mutual interest in alternative music. Hell Yeah is the debut album by Horror Pops. It was released in February 10th, 2004. The first 7 tracks of the album were recorded in 99 at Ventura Recording and was intended as a press kit only demo. However, it was somehow copied and circulated, leading to the tracks Ghouls and Psycho Bitches Out of Hell becoming a hit on the Copenhagen club circuit. The further 6 tracks making up the album were not recorded until 2003, again at Ventura Recordings. It was these 13 tracks that impressed Hellcat Records to the point of signing the band. One of those songs was Mistake. What do you think about Horror Pops and Mistake?
Meh. This was meh. I I didn't
You
like
didn't
this
like
one.
this at all?
Nah, no, not really. This was a
You didn't even
bit.
like the girl bass player
It was okay. It was
just jamming out?
just overall, just like meh.
Yeah, apparently there's also a big psychobilly uh, fan base in Denmark too. I'm surprised this plays as well in Europe as it does because it has such an American sound to it. But yeah, a lot of these people were European. I believe that does it for that list. I think we are done with part two of Cowpunk and Punkabilly.
I,
Again,
I'd
unless you could think of some more songs I need to put in there.
no, I'd say I mean I'd say overall, there were some good on here and stuff that I would highly recommend. And then stuff in here is just kind of, but they were most of those were because they were too punk, and that's just me.
Right on.
So, but as always, I thank you for lists like this. I'm sure they benefit somebody, and every now and then I get some good music out of this, and
Yeah,
I got some out of this. So,
good stuff. Fun stuff.
all right. With that, then we will step over to the murdery side of the house.
Murder.
For today, I got my information off biography, Wikipedia, Britannica, the FBI website, the University of Kentucky Department of Psychology, the Florida Sheriff's Association, and the U.S. Department of Justice. So, last week, I said we would cover Ted Bundy at some point, and then decided, why not now? So,
Yeah, let's
here we
cover Ted
go.
Bundy.
We're going to talk about Ted Bundy. So most serial killers are sexual psychopaths or they're
Yep.
psychopathic sexual sadists, depending on the circumstances of the homicide and what was done to the victim.
Yeah.
They usually have a profound personality disorder. They execute their crimes rationally and may succeed in living apparently normal lives when not hunting or killing victims. We've talked about many of these.
Yeah. Fine,
Serial,
upstanding citizens.
in a lot of cases, yes. Serial killers kill to fulfill an emotional need for power or control over others. That's part of that McDonald triad that we've talked about, which
Hmm.
may or may not be true, but there's theory. The fulfillment of sexual fantasies is usually a secondary aim. They generally select victims who are vulnerable, easy to manipulate. They often use charm and appeal to victims' charitable instincts to maneuver them to a private location where they can gain physical control over them. Following their murders, they can be very meticulous, as was Ted Bundy, in removing crime scene evidence and obstructing victim identification. They typically enjoy demonstrating that their power to avoid detection is greater than the power of the police to catch them. They tend to follow media accounts of their crimes and vary their operation according to police perceptions of their methods. And they profit from the failure of police agencies to communicate across jurisdictions. Um, this overarching theme that I just said here is exactly why they spent a lot of time studying Ted Bundy.
Yeah.
He fit this to the bill. Um, and to we'll get there, but the so much was done to study him, and there's been so much documented about him. So with that, who was Ted Bundy? Ted Bundy was born Theodore Robert Cowell on November 24th, 1946, in Burlington, Vermont. He started his life as his mother's secret shame. He was born illegitimately, and it deeply humiliated her religious parents. His mother, Eleanor Louise Cowell, was unmarried at the time of his birth, which led to early confusion about his parentage. When she was 22 years old, she delivered Ted at a home for unwed mothers. Ted's birth certificate lists his father as unknown, so his biological identity may never be confirmed. However, there's some theories about who he might be. Anne Rule, a co-worker of Ted's and the author of The Stranger Beside Me, suggests Ted's father might have been Lloyd Marshall, who was an Air Force veteran and Penn State graduate. Other sources say Ted's father is Jack Worthington, and some rumors have it that his father was also his grandfather.
Oh.
For much of his early childhood, he was raised by his grandparents, who led him to believe they were his parents and that his mother was his sister. They suspect that this revelation had a significant impact on him. Eventually, Ted Bundy and his mother moved to Tacoma, Washington, where she married Johnny Bundy, who adopted Ted and gave him his last name. And while Ted took the name, he reportedly didn't have much respect for his stepfather, whom he resented for being too uneducated and working class. Ted was very smart.
Hmm.
From an early age, Ted Bundy exhibited behaviors that some would later interpret as early warning signs of psychopathy.
Yeah, but I
From
mean, yeah, I understand if he's smart, but how smart can you be when your brain doesn't work right? You know what
well,
I mean?
well, so there's going to be very varying degrees of that. There's a lot of geniuses that they think have Asperger's,
Yeah.
that their brain doesn't quite work that way.
Yeah.
This is why these serial killers need to be studied more, and especially why they studied Bundy, is
Hmm.
to find out why somebody so smart,
Hmm.
what key turned them,
What?
what
Yeah. What
did
was the
it.
switch? Okay,
Right.
I got you. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, you're fine.
I
Um,
may post questions.
no, I understand what you're saying because but a lot of these serial killers have ended up being very, very extremely smart individuals. And they had to be to get away with it for so long,
Yeah, that's
you
true.
know?
I mean, Ted Bundy got away with it for a
Yeah.
while they knew he was doing it.
Well, and from all appearances, he grew up in a content working class family. He did show an unusual interest in the macabre at an early age. Around the age of 3, he became fascinated by knives. He was also known to pick apart mice in the woods and try to drown people while swimming or boating. And he showed no sense of remorse, guilt, embarrassment, or shame. He was described as socially awkward but intelligent. He attended the University of Washington, where he studied psychology and later briefly attended law school. So, like I said, he was smart.
Yeah.
Um, Despite his outward charm and intelligence, though, Ted Bundy struggled with rejection, particularly from women, which some analysts suggest played a role in his later crimes. His fascination with crime, particularly violent crimes against women, was evident during his teenage years. He was known to peek into windows, steal, and engage in behavior that hinted at a growing sense of detachment from moral or ethical consequences. Some do speculate that this early behavior set the stage for his future crimes. Psychologists and criminal profilers have long debated the potent triggers that led Ted Bundy down the path of becoming a serial killer. Some theories point to the discovery of his true parentage, while others speculate about his experiences with rejection and his inability to establish long lasting romantic relationships. Bundy was
Were they
no,
so the women he were with, or were they also? Because I seem to remember dark hair, long dark hair parted down the middle.
we're getting there.
Okay. All
Yeah,
right. Sorry.
we're actually going to cover exactly what you're talking about. He was known for being manipulative and deceptive, qualities that allowed him to blend into society. During his college years, he became obsessed with crime stories, particularly those involving violent crimes against women. While at the University of Washington, he fell in love with a wealthy, pretty woman from California named Diane Edwards. She had everything he wanted: money, class, and influence, and he was said to have been devastated by their breakup. Most of his victims resembled her: attractive students with long dark hair.
Mhm. Parted down the middle, not feathered, just straight down.
Some believe that his fascination with Diane probably influenced his decision to begin killing. Additionally, a failed relationship with a woman named Stephanie Brooks is often cited as a pivotal moment in his psychological decline. He would later date women who closely resembled Stephanie Brooks in appearance, leading some to believe that his crimes were in part motivated by revenge. So there had to be kind of a combination of the two.
No, okay. Like his
By the
dream woman was
Exactly.
between this one, Diane and Stephanie.
Yep.
He's- you know,
By the mid 70s, he had transformed himself, becoming more outward and active in social and political matters. He even got a letter of recommendation from the Republican governor of Washington after working on his campaign. His victims, dominantly young women, typically college age. He often used deception as a means to lure them to their deaths, sometimes pretending to need help with an injury or posing as an authority figure. Once alone with his victims, he would overpower them, often bludgeoning them unconscious before kidnapping, assaulting, and ultimately killing them. His methods varied, but frequently included strangulation and bludgeoning. And again, his varying methods was another reason it took so long to catch him. Many of his victims' bodies were later discovered in remote locations. His killing spree spanned the states, multiple states, including Washington, Oregon, Utah, and Colorado. There's some debate as to when he started killing. Most sources say he began his rampage around 1974. Around this time, many women in the Seattle area and nearby Oregon went missing. Stories circulated about some of the victims last being seen in the company of a young, dark haired man known as Ted. Um, However, criminologist Matt DeLisi argues in a 2023 book that Bundy likely murdered more than 100 people and started killing in adolescence. He said, quote, Bundy dropped a lot of clues that there were way more murders. Um, and the pacing and confidence with which he's killing between 1974 and 1978 indicates there's no way he could have just started. Ultimately, though, the exact number of women Bundy killed will never be known. One of the most notorious attacks occurred at the Chi Omega sorority house at Florida State University in 78, where he brutally attacked four women, killing two of them. And he was also responsible for the kidnapping and murder of 12-year-old Kimberly Leach, which is his final known victim. He frequently revisited the bodies of those he abducted, grooming and performing sex acts on the corpses until decomposition and destruction by wild animals made further interactions possible. He, decapit-
Ugh.
he decapitated at least 12 of his victims, keeping their severed heads as mementos in his apartment. And on a few occasions, Ted Bundy broke into homes at night and bludgeoned, maimed, and strangled and sexually assaulted his victims in their sleep. Anne Rule characterized Bundy as, quote, a sadistic sociopath who took pleasure from another human's pain and the control he had over his victims to the point of death and even after. He once described himself as, quote, the most cold hearted son of a bitch you'll ever meet. Um, he told this to his attorney, Polly Nelson, who was a member of his defense team, and Polly agreed. She wrote, quote, Ted was the very definition of heartless evil. He was particularly interesting because he was charming and articulate. A lot of people wondered how a clean cut law student with no criminal record could be responsible for dozens of murders because he didn't fit the profile. The facts of the case are captivating, but Bundy was not unique in being a serial murderer. Psychology expert Thomas Widger said, quote, he was for the most part emotionally stable. Trait common to all sociopaths is the ability to be deceptive, to lie with ease. The classic phrase in psychopathy literature is they wear a mask of sanity. There's probably a serial murderer someplace in the United States at any given moment that can be very difficult to catch because there is no personal connection between them and the victim. Ted Bundy did receive a mental health evaluation when he was on trial for the Florida murders. In fact, he was interviewed by Hervey Fleckley, who's considered to be the father of psychopathy. He diagnosed Bundy as a psychopath. By definition, psychopathy refers to, quote, social predators who charm, manipulate, and ruthlessly plow their way through life, completely lacking in conscience and feeling for others. They selfishly take what they want and they do as they please, violating social norms and expectations without the slightest sense of guilt or regret. Psychopath is a personality trait that falls under antisocial personality disorder. And people with antisocial personality disorder have a long term pattern of violating the rights of others without remorse. Whittaker says Cleckley's analysis is mostly accurate, but he said, however, Bundy would also be diagnosed with necrophilia, paraphilia, and sadism, to be more precise. According to Whittaker's research, Bundy had the following traits: antagonism, being deceptive, manipulative, callous, exploitative, and arrogant; extroversion, engaging and assertive; high conscientiousness; low neuroticism, um, which was his glib charm and fearlessness. And Widger had come to the conclusion that they are, quote, successful psychopaths, people who have the core characteristics of a psychopath, yet somehow manage to succeed in exploiting others while avoiding punishment. Widger believes to this day that continued research is a useful tool for learning and learning more and dealing with predatory psychopaths. And I 100% agree to this. The list of Bundy's known victims were Linda Ann Healy, January 31st, 1974. She was abducted from her basement in Seattle, Washington, and her skull was later found at Taylor Mountain. Donna Gale Mason from March 12th, 1974, vanished from the Evergreen State College campus in Olympia, Washington. Her remains have never been found. Susan Raincourt, April 17th, 1974. She disappeared from Central Washington State College in Ellensburg, Washington. Her skull fragments were found at Taylor Mountain. Roberta Kathleen Parks from May 6th, 1975 was abducted from Oregon State University in Corvallis, Oregon. Her remains were found at Taylor Mountain. And Brenda Carol Ball, June 1st, 1974, was last seen at a bar south of Seattle. Her skull would also be found at Taylor Mountain, and Bundy confessed to these five murders. Georgia Ann Hawkins, June 11th, 1974, disappeared from an alley near her dorm at the University of Washington. Her remains were found at Taylor Mountain. Bundy confessed to this murder, and there were also witnesses in this one as well.
Witnesses
Uh,
to the murder?
Witnesses to her being with him,
Ah,
as
okay.
many saw. Janet Thought and Denise Naslin, July 14th, 1974, were both abducted on the same day from Lake Sammamish State Park in Issaquah, Washington. Wow. Their remains were found in a wooded area nearby, and witnesses saw Ted Bundy luring them away using a fake arm sling. Nancy Wilcox, last seen in Holiday, Utah. She was believed to have been buried in a secluded area, but her body was never found. Bundy did confess to her. Melissa Smith, kidnapped October 18th, 1974, from Midvale, Utah. Her body was found strangled and sexually assaulted. Forensics evidence linked Ted Bundy here, and he later confessed. Laura Ann Amy, October 31st, 1974, disappeared after
Yeah, we're
leaving.
still in 1974.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Fuck, you got two in one day.
Yeah. She disappeared after leaving a cafe in Lehi, Utah. Her body was found beaten, strangled, and sexually assaulted. Ted Bundy just confessed to this murder. Debbie Kent, November 8th, 1974, abducted outside a school play in Bountiful, Utah. Her remains were never found, but a handcuff key belonging to Bundy's handcuffs were found near where she disappeared. Karen Campbell, January 12th, 1975, so now we're on to 75. She was taken from a hotel hallway in Snowmass, Colorado. She was found beaten to death. Julie Cunningham, March 15th, 1975, vanished in Vail, Colorado. Bundy claimed to have buried her remains, but they've never been found. Denise Oliverson, April 6th, 1975, disappeared while riding her bike in Grand Junction, Colorado. Her body was never found. Lynette Culver, May 6th, 1975, kidnapped from her school in Pocatello, Idaho. Bundy admitted to drowning her and disposing of her body in a river. Susan Curtis, June 28th, 1975, vanished from a youth conference in Provo, Utah. Her remains were never covered. Bundy confessed to these five murders. Margaret Bowman and Lisa Levy, January 15th, 1978. So I think it's weird. We go from 75 to 78 and nothing.
He must have
At
been in a
least nothing.
relationship.
Well, at least nothing confirmed.
Yeah.
But being in a relationship doesn't necessarily stop him. Think about the Green River Killer.
Yeah, that's true.
He was living with a lady, and
Hmm.
he killed people in the house. Margaret Bowman and Lisa Levy, January 15th, 78, murdered in the Chi Omega sorority house at Florida State University. Uh, Bundy entered the sorority house located at 661 West Jefferson Street through a back door with a faulty lock. He beat Margaret with a piece of wood as she slept and choked her with a nylon stocking. Then he entered the room of Lisa, beat her unconscious, bit her on the buttock, and sexually assaulted her with a hairspray bottle. He then attacked two other victims, Karen Chandler and Kathy Kleiner, who survived. The bite mark on Lisa's body provided forensics evidence. After fleeing the sorority house, he ran to Dunwoody Street in some sort of psychopathic frenzy where he broke into the apartment of Cheryl Thomas, another FSU student, and beat her. She survived but was left with permanent disabilities. And then Kimberly Leach, February 9th, 1978, who is Ted Bundy's last known victim. He abducted her from her school in Lake City, Florida. Her body was found weeks later in a wooded area. He was convicted based on fiber evidence and witness testimonies. Um, his intelligence and charm is why he was able to evade capture for so long. He often changed locations, he used different tactics, and managed to manipulate those around him into believing he was innocent. Law enforcement struggled to link the various cases together until Ted Bundy's distinctive methods and physical descriptions began to emerge as a pattern. His most well-known girlfriend, Elizabeth Klopfer, would eventually help police arrest and arrest him. He and Klopfer began a 6-year relationship in 1969 after meeting at a Seattle bar. She was a single mom of a young daughter, and she struggled with alcoholism. Uh, Ted Bundy took care of her, and she said he was warm and loving. By 1974, she started to suspect Bundy of his crime. When she questioned him about odd behaviors like keeping a meat cleaver in his desk, he used his charm to deflect her concern. She secretly went to the police about her suspicion of Bundy's involvement in prominent local murders, but they didn't believe he was the killer. They did remain together, but they grew distant when Bundy moved to Olympia the following year. In 75, she went to police again, this time with evidence that helped them to arrest Ted Bundy. He had confessed to her over the phone from his prison cell that he had tried to kill her and couldn't resist the impulses he felt in quote his sickness building in him. She broke ties with Bundy for good later and wrote a book about her experience. He was first arrested in Utah in 1975 when police linked his Volkswagen Beetle to a string of missing women. A search of the vehicle uncovered burglary tools, handcuffs, and other suspicious items, and so authorities began to suspect him of more serious crime. Bundy would be arrested, and the arrested officer reported that Bundy said, quote, "I wish you had killed me." Despite being held on kidnapping charges for the kidnapping of Carol DeRange, he managed to escape from custody twice. He was convicted of the kidnapping and received a 1 to 15-year jail sentence. In 1977, he escaped from a courthouse in Aspen, Colorado, when
That's
he
why
had
he
been.
stopped between 75 and 78.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, that's true because he was in jail. I forgot about that. Duh. I'm the dummy there.
It's a big
Uh,
timeline. It's a lot to keep up with,
it
sir.
is.
I wouldn't go
It
that
is.
far.
So in the jail, he was allowed to use the law library unsupervised, and he jumped out of the second story window and was able to remain at large for several days before being recaptured. Later that year, he escaped again, this time from a jail cell in Glenwood Springs, Colorado, by crawling through a small hole in the ceiling. His second escape attempt, his second escape led to his final spree in Florida, where he committed the two of his last known murders at the Chi Omega sorority house, plus the little girl. He was added to the FBI's top 10 fugitive list on February 10th, 1978, and was arrested 5 days later. His trial for the Chi Omega murders was one of the first nationally televised trials in the U.S. He used his charm and legal knowledge to represent himself in court, and this fascinated the public. However, the evidence against him, including the bite mark analysis linking him to one of the victims, proved to be damning, and he was convicted and sentenced to death in 1979. The trial showcased his arrogance. He frequently clashed with prosecutors and even cross-examined witnesses himself. Despite his efforts to manipulate the jury, the overwhelming evidence against him sealed his fate. He received 3 separate death sentences for the murder of the 2 sorority girls and one for 12-year-old Kimberly Leach. He spent 9 years on death row appealing his first 2 sentences. He was sentenced to death by the electric chair. He
Yeah, he
appealed,
wrote
trying.
old. I remember that he wrote old Sparky.
Yes, yes, he did.
And I remember that being
That
on
was the
TV, and
nickname of it.
yeah, we were watching it, and all like the news feed was just showing like the prison, and they had some lights up, and then the lights dim. It's like, well, that's done. Oh, that would be the electric chair.
Well, his case did go all the way up to the Supreme Court, but he was turned down for appeal. He did offer information on some unsolved murders, hoping to avoid the death penalty, but he couldn't delay punishment forever. While he was in prison, as I talked earlier in the story, Ted Bundy was extensively studied by behavioral analysis, including those involved with the FBI's early profiling efforts. He was often described as a textbook case of a psychopathic serial killer, lacking empathy, highly manipulative, and displaying grandiose behavior. In interviews, he provided chilling confessions about his murders, often speaking about his crimes in the third person as if detaching himself from his actions. Ted Bundy eventually confessed to killing at least 30 women, though experts believe the true number may be much higher. Some experts do believe the count might go over to 100, as we talked about earlier. His interviews with FBI profilers have helped shape modern criminal profiling techniques, offering insight into the mind of a serial killer. In February 1980, This was interesting. Ted Bundy married Carol Ann Boone, a mother of two whom he'd met before his initial arrest. They were wed in a courtroom during the penalty phase of his trial. He proposed and she accepted in the presence of a judge, making the marriage legitimate in Florida. They had met 6 years earlier when they both worked at the Department of Emergency Services in Olympia, Washington. Boone gave birth to a daughter, Rose, in 1982, and she named Bundy as the father. Initially, Bundy's paternity was questioned because he wasn't allowed conjugal visits in prison, but Ann Rule has said that it's likely Bundy was able to bribe prison guards into letting the couple have sex. Boone eventually realized Bundy was guilty of his crimes, and she divorced him in 1986 and moved to Washington with her daughter. Not much is known about Rose, also known as Rosa today. It's believed that Boone changed both of their names to help them stay out of the public eye.
I'll bet.
Anne Rule has said she deliberately avoided information about Boone or Rose because they deserve their privacy. She said, quote, I don't want to know where they are. I never want to be caught off guard by some reporter's question about them. All I know is Ted's daughter has grown up to be a fine young woman.
Okay. Yeah. It's like, hey, that's all. She did good. She's not crazy. Everybody's happy. It is definitely nurture, not nature.
Yes. After years of appeals, Bundy was executed in the electric chair, as you had said, Old Sparky at Florida State Prison on January 24th, 1989, at the age of 42. Outside the prison, crowds celebrated his execution, holding signs that read, Burn, Bundy, burn. His final words reportedly expressed no remorse for his crimes. His execution marked the end of a very chilling chapter in American criminal history, yet his influence on criminology and law enforcement remains significant. Following his execution, scientists removed Bundy's brain and studied it for signs of physical abnormalities that could have explained his violent behavior. However, they didn't find any. He was cremated in Gainesville, Florida, but there was no public ceremony. Before he was executed, he requested his ashes be scattered in the Cascade Mountains of Washington State, where he murdered at least 4 of his victims. Since his death, he's remained one of the most infamous serial killers in history, inspiring numerous books, movies, and television series. Documentaries such as Netflix's Confessions with a Killer, the Ted Bundy tapes from 2019, provided firsthand accounts with his interviews, while films like Extremely Wicked, Shockingly Evil, and Vile in 2019, starring Zac Efron, portray his crimes from the perspective of those close to him. His case has been analyzed in numerous crime books, including The Stranger Beside Me by Anne Rule, that we mentioned earlier, who personally knew Ted before discovering his true nature. Many believe that Ted Bundy at least partly inspired the fictional killer Buffalo Bill in the
Mhm.
1988 novel Silence of the Lambs. His manipulative charm and horrifying crimes continue to captivate the public, making him one of the most studied serial killers in history. His legacy is one of horror and fascination. His crimes continue to be studied as an example of extreme psychopathy or psychopathy, however you want to pronounce that. In his case, is a cautionary tales about the dangers of manipulative individuals who appear outwardly normal. His execution did end his reign of terror, but his story does live on in criminology studies, popular media, podcasts, TV shows, movies, you name it. There's tons of stuff out there about Ted Bundy. He is a fascinating case study, and I'd had him on my list for a very long time, and finally decided it was time to dive into that. But that's the story of Ted Bundy.
Well, thank you for that, sir. If you've got pictures, kids, look at the pictures of Ted Bundy. Ted Bundy doesn't look like he's capable of those things.
No,
If you look at Ted Bundy's face, he's a everyman. Conventionally handsome, one
look
would
at
say.
look at the picture of Gary Ridgway,
Yeah,
the Green River Killer. Same
yeah,
thing.
same thing.
BTK,
Hmm.
same thing. You'll see that in a lot of them. Very rarely do they, do you look at them and go, "Yep, serial killer." Yep.
Yeah,
It just doesn't happen. So anyway, thanks for taking that journey with me. Hope you learned something new on there that you didn't know before.
I did.
That will take us to the end of another recording week. As always, you can find more information about us on nerderymurdery.com. That's our hub. That's our site for everything we talk about. You'll find links to what we talked about in this episode, plus pictures. Plus, you'll find the link to our YouTube page with Zig So Often update.
Yes, you definitely want to check this one out. It's got the music that we talked about. Hopefully, you guys listened to it before the show, but you definitely go listen to it now.
Awesome. Appreciate all your work on that. You can also find the link to our merchandise page, where if you wish to show off your nerdery murdery fandom, please do consider purchasing something from there. That, along with our patrons, you can find the link to our Patreon site. That goes to the costs that are associated with this show. There are costs to keep us on the air, the uploads, our website, and everything that goes into it. But we do appreciate each and every one of you.
Please and thank you.
Please and thank you. Last but not least, please don't forget to leave a 5-star review wherever you can. It really helps us and helps others find our content that may be looking for the topics we discuss. So with that,
I have been sick with your nerdery.
and I'm Jeffrey with your murdering.
Cue the music.